So today we're gonna work on some specific drills that you can utilize within your practice to sort of build a bridge between super foundational ideas within hip hop dance and your actual practice and your actual style. It's one thing to understand how to do these foundational ideas by themselves, but it's another thing entirely to incorporate them into your practice and into the way that you dance. So today we're hopefully gonna bridge that gap, and I'm gonna try to give you guys some tangible tools that you can utilize just to bring these ideas into your style. So let's go ahead and get into it. So like I said, it's one thing entirely to understand foundational concepts within hip hop, whether that be a basic bounce or a rock or even some basic vocabulary steps that have been created over time. It's one thing to understand those ideas by themselves, isolated. And then once you kind of have a better understanding of foundation and you understand the difference between those different concepts and ideas, the game becomes how you can incorporate those ideas into your style and into how you dance. Whether it's freestyle or choreography, learning how to take these foundational ideas and incorporate them into your practice is another thing entirely from just being able to understand what foundation is and how to do it by itself, if that makes sense. So I would still consider that everything that we're gonna do in this video foundation based, or these are foundational drills. But the idea today is more so about how we can actually tangibly utilize these ideas in our dance, and also trying to figure out how these ideas change the way that we move or change the way that we approach movement. So I'm gonna try to give you guys some tangible tools that you can actually utilize to incorporate some of these basic ideas or these foundational ideas into your practice. I just did a video breaking down some fundamental rock ideas. You can go ahead and check that out. And you can also check out my 5 elements of hip hop video that I think will also be super helpful. If you're not as familiar with these foundational ideas, definitely recommend checking that out. I'm gonna link both of those videos down below in the description. This video is made with the assumption that those who are watching it or utilizing it already kind of have an understanding of the difference between rock and bounce and those different foundational ideas, and who are now seeking to take things to the next level, or who are seeking, how can I take this from being an idea that we just talk about and train by itself over and over again into something that I actually incorporate into how I dance every day. Hopefully we're able to sort of bridge that gap. So today specifically, the foundational idea that we're gonna sort of build everything that we talk about in this video around is downrock. A simple explanation of downrock is to find a rock that ends forward on the downbeat of a song, or that ends forward on every count of a song. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've also got 4 different steps that I'm kind of going to break down very briefly here that we're going to utilize to formulate or to create these drills that I'm going to give you guys that you can utilize to practice some of these ideas. Some of these are just basic ideas that I'm going to utilize to help us train different variations of this rock. And some of these are also codified steps or just hip hop dance steps that we're going to utilize to help our bodies get used to doing different types of movement or doing different steps, we'll say, while also maintaining this foundational idea, or learning how to utilize this foundation as we switch between these different steps. The first step that I'm gonna break down is called the Patty Duke. You've probably seen this step before, but basically a Patty Duke is a step out to the side, a step to the center, and a step out to the side with the opposite foot. So in real tempo, that would be a down and down and down and down. The second step that we're gonna utilize is the MC Rock. And we talked about this a couple different times on the channel. The MC Rock is based off of how MCs or rappers interact with the crowd during their shows, where they'll be kind of talking to everybody. They'll be sort of moving to the song and engaging with the crowd. For today, the kind of standard version that we're gonna use is just picking up the legs as we rock forward and kind of using these hands to just gesture or communicate. The third step that we're going to utilize is the ATL. And I don't know that we've done a real breakdown of this step on the channel before, but that's coming soon. The basic idea with an ATL is we slide our foot out, rocking forward. We slide our foot in, rocking up, and we bring our knee of that same foot to our chest, rocking forward to set it down. Out and down to repeat on the other side. Come up, forward, and forward. And then the final step or idea that we're gonna play around with today is simply just steps. Now, stepping is obviously not a codified hip hop move or anything, but I thought it would give us a little bit more freedom and a little bit more ability. And really, steps I utilize all the time when I'm freestyling. It's a little bit more of a basic idea, but I think it'll be super helpful for us today. So those are the 4 steps that we're gonna be playing around with: the Patty Duke, the MC Rock, the ATL, and just basic steps. So the first drill that we're gonna do today, and that I recommend you guys try yourselves, is to take these steps and to just sort of create a short combo or a short sequence that you can do these steps in, one right after the other, working on transitioning between each of them while maintaining this foundational rock or this foundational idea. So let's just say, for example, our pattern starts with 4 counts of an ATL and then 4 counts of an MC Rock, straight into 4 counts of a Patty Duke, to then finish with 4 counts of simple steps to the front. That's our sequence: ATL, MC Rock, Patty Duke, steps. That's a 2 8-count sequence that can be repeated over and over while listening to music that will help you to train, 1, maintaining the foundational concept, and then also transitioning between different steps as you maintain that foundational idea. You can do these steps in any order or set them to any sequence that you would prefer, but the basic idea or the basic goal is to, 1, train maintaining this basic foundational idea, and 2, to incorporate that idea into these basic steps. The second drill that I have is a little bit more isolated and a little bit more in depth. Instead of taking multiple steps and stringing them together to create a sequence, we're gonna instead take 1 step and try to train all the different variations that we can do with just that 1 step. So as we rock forward on this downbeat, let's say we're playing around with our MC Rock. I'm gonna set this down. We can do the MC Rock like this forever, and there's nothing wrong or incorrect about that except for the fact that that's boring. You don't want to do this for the rest of all eternity. And it doesn't have to be any sort of crazy variation. It could literally be something like single, single, double. Single, single, double. You can just make little changes and adjustments to your movement to give it a new dynamic. Instead of lifting your knee up every time, you can simply just step forward, or you can present your heel. 2, 3, 4. You don't have to do the same pattern with your arms. You can play around with different pathways and different positioning. You can face different directions. Take it around in the room, explore the space. It's super helpful to do this with just 1 isolated step, because then that's just 1 less thing you have to worry about. You're not like, okay, I'm doing it with this step, but oh, now I have to try to do a different step, you know? Taking 1 step, or beginning from a simple place, if you will, and then building on that and adding new layers from there is gonna be way easier than playing around with a whole bunch of ideas at once. It'll just make your brain feel more clear, and you'll have more of a linear path that you're going to go on, or a more clear direction. You could do the same with the Patty Duke. You could start by adding in doubles. You could change directions. You could stay stationary, or you could travel. You could change the direction that your foot is facing. You could play around with, instead of going side to side all the time, taking your foot to different directions. You could change up what you're doing with your arms, and play around with taking them to different spots, playing around with new space. It doesn't have to always be this sort of like bouncy feel. You could play around with resistance, or you could really like loosen it up, or even silly things like you could find ticks out to the position. But you see what I mean? There really is just so many different options. You don't need to feel limited to one way of doing the step. You can explore unlimited variations, unlimited ways of doing the same exact pattern, just with a different emphasis on it. So that's something that I would definitely encourage you to do. Take a more isolated step or idea and just try to freak it or change it in as many ways as you possibly can. Like, just get as creative as possible, and don't set like limits like, oh, well, does it look right? Or is this like, you know, the correct thing? Like, try to let go of all of that for a little bit and just explore and try new things, because I think it's always better to just kind of put it on the line and be like, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to try this. And then if I need to adjust later, that's fine. But really, for the most part, if you can just trust yourself and just fully commit to what you're doing, it's going to look a lot better than you will look if you're kind of just nervous, waiting around like, I don't know if anything that I'm doing is right. So I'm just going to kind of do what's safe and not really do anything too crazy or out of the box. I want you guys to feel free to explore and to try new things. So that's our second drill. The third drill is to play with different energy and timing inflections. Like I said before, we don't just have to do our patty duke like this. Over and over, side to side. A timing inflection could be simply adding a double. 1 and 2 and double to the right. 1 and 2 and double to the left. I see that as an inflection as opposed to this, which doesn't really have a whole lot of anything. It just sort of stays flat the whole time. Not that it's bad. You need this step. But if you just do this step for an hour, it's not going to have the same effect as even if you were to do a 1, 2, boom, ba, boom. 1, 2, boom, ba, boom. If that makes sense. Little changes or little adjustments to how you do a step or the timing of a step can be super effective. Also, learning how to utilize different amounts of energy or how to communicate different amounts of energy that are being exerted while you're doing a step. So let's say I'm doing our trusty old patty duke here. I can do this step very chill or very mild, or I can add different inflections of energy to make it more exciting. And a lot of this will have to do with the tone or the relationship between your movement and the music that you're dancing to. What is the song calling for? Is it calling for more of a chill vibe, or is it calling for a little bit more explosiveness, a little bit more range? I do also want to say that playing around with your energy does not simply mean doing things bigger or doing things harder. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad to just go really hard sometimes, but I think that we can think about it a little bit more critically than that. As opposed to more energy meaning just bigger and dancing harder, more energy can simply be the change from going here to here. I'm still light on my feet, I'm still quiet, everything's still controlled, but there's a difference between this energy and this energy. So playing around with different inflections of timing and energy is a great way to explore different variations or different ways that you can move while maintaining your foundation. So that's drill number 3. And we've kind of already covered this a little bit, but the fourth drill that I'm going to give you guys is to play around with different textures while you're doing these steps. So when we talk about textures in dance, I think a super helpful analogy is to think about the different textures of wood. So wood can have many different textures, but it is all the same substance, or it's all the same thing. If you were to cut down a tree and cut it in half and then sand it down, the texture of the part of the tree that you sanded would be super smooth and easy to touch, probably turn it into a table or something. Whereas opposed to you could take the same exact tree, never cut it down, and run your hand across the bark, and it's a little bit more coarse, and it has a different feel to it. Same substance, different texture. This floor is wood. It has a different texture than these 2x4s that are making up the walls of the shed. They're made of the same thing. They came from a tree, but they have a different texture. And I think that you can think about playing around with textures in dance in the same way. We're gonna do the same step. This is the substance that we're playing with, but we're just gonna play with how that looks in our body. And you can do just the plain ATL, or you can do it with a little bit more resistance. Add a rebound. Add little ticks. You could add a drop. I think that's helpful because not only do you have to kind of change how you're doing the step, you also have to learn how to adapt the foundational idea to the different texture that you're doing. So let's say you are doing it with a little bit more of a drop at the bottom. Your rock can't just stay the same like basic stock version. You have to sort of add a different inflection to it. Incorporate your spine a little bit more. It forces you to not only change how you're moving the rest of your body, but also how to play around with different textures of the foundational rock. And as a little side practice, even though we're talking about training this rock by utilizing different steps today, you can play around with incorporating different textures to an isolated foundational idea all by itself. Really what I want you guys to glean from this is that there's really not one way to do these steps or to utilize these ideas. Just a little side note before we get into this last drill. For me, I find it super easy whenever I'm playing around with these different variations to focus very heavily on my feet. Because the feet really are kind of the highlight of everything that we're doing today. The upper body is more so just holding a position to kind of complement what the feet are doing. And so I think sometimes what can happen for me is I forget to think about how I can utilize my upper body or how I can train different variations with this half of my body as I'm playing around with different ideas in my lower half. Let's say I'm doing the patty duke. I start here My hands are just kind of in this default position. And as I'm playing around with different variations of my feet, I can utilize my hands in different ways to add new dimensions to the step. And you can see how when you start adding all of these different ideas, the step kind of starts to get lost and you're really just exploring. You began with a simple idea to sort of give you a direction, and then as you sort of depart from that, you start creating this whole new story, this whole new moment in time that is based off of one simple foundational idea. So just learning how to take these super basic ideas and turn them into something new is super valuable. I really don't think I can stress that enough. For me, one of the biggest struggles that I've had in my own practice is really kind of just knowing where to start or knowing what direction to go in, or trying to take on super complex ideas that I see other people doing without really understanding the foundation or the root of them, without being able to actually know what they're doing or how they're doing it, you know? I've found myself just sort of fighting myself and being mad that I can't do super intricate variations or match the music in the way that he's matching the music, you know? Like, I beat myself up for that, and what has really given me the most freedom or the most ability to explore on my own is to have or to base the things that I'm doing off of a more simple idea, a more isolated idea that I understand super well, and to from there add my own spin, or to simply just pull from the inspirations of people that I see and try to emulate different aspects of people's movement within what I'm doing, and to then take that idea and turn it into my own thing, or to add new layers to it. I kind of say a lot of the same things over and over again, but really it's just because that is what has helped me so much over the years. It's kind of like the difference between starting with a coloring book that has designs that are filled out for you that you can color in and add your own imagination to, and starting with a blank piece of paper. There's nothing wrong with starting with a blank piece of paper. It's just that it's not always what you want to do, especially when it comes to freestyle, because freestyle, it's really, you know, it's all off the dome. It's all in the moment. And so it's kind of hard to just sort of start with nothing and create something, if that makes sense. I found that if I can think, okay, I'm gonna begin with this one simple idea that will give me a general direction that I can go in, and if I find new ideas along the way, or if I kind of depart from this idea that I started with, that's okay, because it's what got me going, and it's what's allowing me to explore further and to go deeper into my freestyle or into my exploration. And speaking of freestyle, that brings us to our fifth and final drill, which I really think is the most valuable out of any of these that I've given you today. And that fifth drill is simply to turn on some music, take a simple idea, whether it's one that we talked about today or one that you found on your own, start with that and start to explore different ways that you can utilize that idea. What does it look like to change that idea to match the song that you're dancing to? What does it look like to change the rhythm or the texture of that idea that you're utilizing? What does it look like to create or to do something completely different while holding on to this sort of foundational idea as sort of a guide? I think that the most valuable out of all of these exercises is to have that initiative in yourself to just explore on your own, to have the courage to just trial and error different ideas over and over and over again. That's all that freestyle really is. And the more that you can do that, the more that you can take these ideas and familiarize your body with them, and the more that you can sort of work out the kinks that you find along the way, the more fluently and the more effectively you're going to be able to communicate as a dancer. So anyways, I really hope that all of that made sense. Feel free to comment down below anything that you guys would like further explanation on, or anything that you feel you would like me to clarify. I'm always open for that. My goal here is to help you guys out as much as I can. I'm not just here to make these videos for myself. I actually really want you guys to get something out of it. So feel free to comment down below and let me know if there's anything that you guys would like further explanation on. I might hit a quick round real quick, just kind of playing around with some of these ideas that we talked about today, and some new ones, just to kind of give you guys an example. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Peace out.